Word to cloud. Okay, so I'll start off. Welcome to another edition of Hashtag Finance, the podcast brought to you by the Canadian Securities Exchange. It's Friday, May the 1st, and I'm here with Shafin Diamond Tejani. Shafin is the CEO of Victory Square Technologies, which is listed on the Canadian Securities Exchange. We're going to get into it. We're going to talk about a lot of things tech today, and I'm going to get Shafin to give us a nice little intro on Victory Square Technologies and some of the stuff that they're working on.
Hey, nice to meet you, man. Thanks for having me on the show. Hopefully you and everybody out there is safe and staying sane. So Victory Square Technologies is a venture studio. Basically, we work with some of the top startups and entrepreneurs from all over the world, specifically in the technology space, and we take them from seed to scale. So we spend about 12 to 36 months working with them, helping them kind of build their product, validate their product with customers, and then commercialize their technology or solution. Our focus is generally in the areas of virtual and augmented reality, artificial intelligence, gaming and esports, and a bunch of other SaaS-related kind of spaces and fields.
VST is the ticker on the Canadian Securities Exchange. We're going to get into a lot of the stuff that you've talked about, but just let's start off talking about the transition that we've all gone through with working from home. So how's quarantine life? How's isolation? Let's start off from the angle of you as the leader of Victory Square Technologies. How's it been going working with your team?
So, it's funny, if I go back 20 years ago, having been in the tech industry since the early kind of dot-com era, it was always important for me to have a business where I could work virtually. And at that time, I know if I wanted to work on a beach, all I needed was a computer and internet access, to connect with customers, teams, and kind of run my daily operational businesses. And so from a work perspective, I think Victory Square Technologies and all of our portfolio companies have transitioned well because, again, we are tech businesses, and we've already been using tools like email, Zoom, Microsoft Teams, Slack, and a bunch of other, Basecamp, a bunch of other tools to kind of, keep the business connected, productive, and kind of pushing forward. So on that side, it hasn't necessarily been, negative or bad. Obviously, I miss seeing people in person, but the biggest challenge for me personally has been home. I think my wife and I have 2 young kids, and having 4 people in the house all day, every day, which is, not the normal, has been a bit chaotic. So I think it's getting that adjustment of, the kids not being at school and having to start off the day kind of homeschooling them, making sure they're kind of prepared.
Getting them set for the day so you can take time and focus on the tasks that you need to.
Yeah. And, and again, it's been funny. And I'm sure a lot of people have had the same experience. You'll be on a Zoom meeting, like this, and I have 2 young kids, an 8-year-old and a 5-year-old, and they'll start fighting, and then they'll come and talk to me while I'm on an actual Zoom call, and so it's been those things. Those have been the things I think that have been kind of the challenges in adjusting from working from an office to working from home. Some of our team and I have been actually coming into the office, obviously practicing, social distancing, but it's almost been like a massive break for me to come into work because, there's no traffic getting in, and then, the office has been,
and you probably get a lot more done at the office without having not only distractions at work, but also from when you're at home working. I was going to mention, I see that today you're at the office. Last time we were live, you were speaking from home. I see you got the Starbucks going too. You're gonna make a lot of people jealous now.
I got my, it's funny. I'm such a creature of habit. So like from the Starbucks to like where I get my lunch and where I get my like dessert, it's like the same places that I've missed, and so I feel really good being back in that kind of
that routine. I call it being particular about the things that you like. Nothing wrong with it.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. You work hard, you play hard. So we started off with an intro to the company. You mentioned about your balance when it comes to managing the team. You did mention that you have Victory Square Technologies, with its large portfolio that you have. The teams are sort of all over the world at times, and you guys have been going through that sort of way to connect, basically. So you guys have already been connected. Now that you find we're all in this isolation period, it's kind of an easy transition for you and your team because you guys have been sort of already on that path.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, tech is borderless by nature. So whether it's our companies or the customers or clients of the companies, they're all over the world, and so we've everyone's already had to kind of adopt tools like Zoom and Blue Jeans and these types of tools that make it much more efficient to prospect clients and close clients for a lot of these portfolio companies, as opposed to kind of jumping on a plane and traveling and with time zone differences, and et cetera, et cetera. So all the companies have already been kind of using a lot of these tools, and then Slack and tools like product management. Tools like Basecamp, as an example, are tools that a lot of companies have already been using from a productivity standpoint. So we were very fortunate that a lot of the companies were already utilizing a lot of tools that made the transition fairly seamless. And one of the things, though, I was mentioning earlier, the biggest adjustment I think is that camaraderie of coming into an office,
breaking bread aspect, shaking.
Seeing everybody. And what's been interesting is because we have a wide portfolio of over 20 companies, you get to see some best practices from different kind of leaders and CEOs of those companies, and we've seen some continue to keep some traditional things alive, like celebrating birthdays, setting up a Zoom call and and having everyone, one company actually had a cake and balloons delivered to all of the staff.
Oh.
And then they did the Zoom call at once, and and kind of celebrated.
That's a nice surprise, actually.
But it's those types of things that I think you kind of find out. You have a a pain point is that the camaraderie is not there. We're starting to see CEOs kind of take leadership roles and coming up ways to kind of still keep that connection together. We've seen games nights on House Party, which is another app, in the evening with teams, and it's interesting because it's not a matter of if things get better. It's just a matter of when. And so I think, a lot of, and this is kind of that period where leaders are born to not only, instill in their teams that things are, that keep everyone together, that we will get back to, kind of a new normal, but to keep the connection kind of tight. Almost like a long distance relationship before you see.
Absolutely. Well, I think a lot of people now are going to be realizing and using it a lot more, whereas I think we talked about it previously, where it comes to a lot of work related travel, having to travel out east to Toronto for meetings and stuff like that. I think more people are going to be utilizing the tech that we are using at this time, and probably implementing it into their day-to-day lives once we're out of isolation. And I think, where we're at with technology, if we weren't at this point of connectivity with tech, I think it would have been really hard for a lot of people to go through this isolation period. Right now we've got Netflix, we've got, like you mentioned, Zoom, Slack, all of these tools, not just to keep you connected and engaged when it comes professionally and for work, but also for, an escape, whether it's Netflix or you're playing video games or whatnot.
No, absolutely. And, two companies that are so critical to everything right now, companies like Amazon and Netflix, for example, came out of, were built out of recessionary periods. So, the other point to that is not only has technology, shown how key and important it is kind of to our daily lives, but, what types of technologies can be introduced today that are solving pain points for what the new normal kind of maybe on a go forward basis. Because, imagine if we were, this was 25 years ago and we didn't have Netflix, or we didn't have, Amazon to deliver packages directly. And, it's interesting to or FaceTime for that matter, to actually, see people kind of in person. So technology is, is so integral and key to, everything we do, whether it's personal or business. But it's going to be interesting to see that, a lot of technology and a lot of innovation generally comes out of these types of times and periods. And I think that this period today and this period over the next, let's say, 12 to 18 months is going to spawn a whole new era of innovation, you know, that will be built for what the new norms are, what people saw as the pain points, you know, today. And also the fact that, you know, there are a lot of people that may not be going back to jobs, and now this is kind of their opportunity to kind of start or build their own businesses, you know, based on new innovations that they kind of see happening on a go-forward basis.
I've heard stories of a lot of businesses, you know, even smaller mom and shop bake type, like, you know, selling baked goodies and stuff like that, being able, are now being put into this scenario where, you know, they can't really sell too many baked goods. People aren't leaving their house, but they've been able to scale up by using online methods to actually not only engage more people, but also sell more product by those things. So I think people are really resilient. They'll be able to figure that out. Some are going to sink or swim, and that's the normal course of life.
Yeah, and the one thing to that though is that, you know, as human, you know, humankind, we've been through you know, wars, and we've been through pandemics, and we've been through depressions and recessions, and you know, we always come back, we always bounce back, and you know, and we've always seen over, let's see, even the last 100 years, there's always continued evolution, you know, with us as a society. So I think that even though there might be some challenging times ahead, challenging times today and challenging times ahead, I think things will get better. And I think it's going to force a lot of people to, you know, rethink a lot of different things, whether it's professionally or personally.
Whether to wear a suit to work every day.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, or to kind of determine what their next steps are. I know for me, like, it's interesting because I was talking to my wife about this morning. You know, because our companies are coming from all over the world, you know, I'm generally on a plane traveling constantly, and that travel keeps me away from, you know, my kids and my wife and my family, takes me out of routine, you know, different time zones, sleeping in hotels, you know, eating poorly, you know, and you know, impact on health. And now I'm noticing that I can pretty much do like 75% of that without having to leave, you know, Vancouver, which is where we're based. And so, you know, it's not only going to be significantly, you know, cheaper from a cost perspective, but it's going to be a lot more, it's going to be a lot better on my health and my time with my family and stuff like that. So, you know, I don't think I would have had this, you know, I had the catalyst to make those adjustments unless like something, you know, significant like what's been happening now kind of happens. So.
Absolutely. Shafin, why don't we talk a little bit about Victory Square? I know you gave us a little bit of a breakdown. You guys do have quite a lot of, you know, companies within your portfolio. I think, how many did you say last time? I think you said 18 or
No, so we have over 20 companies,
20 companies.
Yeah, that are kind of in the portfolio. And of those, we kind of break them into select and like companies that are still in the early kind of incubation stage. And about 10 of those, you know, over 20 companies are kind of select companies. So those are companies where, you know, great team, great product, customer market fit, and they're ready to kind of commercialize. So those are the ones that we're kind of focused on right now.
Got it. You did mention some of the areas of focus being blockchain, machine learning, AI. Those are, in my opinion anyways, a lot of the sectors that are going to progress out of this isolation period and everybody working from home. You want to maybe give us a little bit of your insight into what you feel are going to be sort of rising above others when it comes to these sectors?
Yeah, so, you know, I can speak, you know, kind of on our perspective. And our perspective and thesis kind of goes back to, you know, our experience over the last 25 years. And so, you know, as an example, you look, you know, people want to do the same things. They want, you know, they're going to eat, work, play, you know, connect with one another. It's how they do that that's been changing from, you know, bricks and mortar to, you know, the early internet years, from early internet years to mobile, and from mobile to, you know, what we're seeing kind of today, you know, with we define kind of as the fourth industrial kind of revolution. And so whether it was 20 years ago or you know, 5 years ago or today, we've always looked at the how. So, you know, what are the spaces that we think are going to kind of determine how people eat, work, play, and connect, you know, over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. So for us as a company, we've had a, you know, a big focus on, you know, virtual and augmented reality. That's a sector that we think is going to be important in a lot of industries, whether it's training, gaming, travel. You know, I don't know if you read, you know, the you know, Greece is basically creating virtual tours of some of its, you know, its its historical sites. And so, virtual and augmented reality is a space and sector that we've spent a lot of time in. It's a sector we've been in for a couple of years now, maybe a bit, we kind of got into that sector a bit early. We think that's going to be, kind of a defining, technology. The other is AI. Artificial intelligence, I think, is going to be key to a lot of different verticals and spaces, and it's a key component in some of our portfolio companies. Gaming. Gaming is a big one. Obviously, I think you've seen gaming and esports has been gaining a lot of attention both on the private and public market space. We've been in the gaming space for a number of years, and the numbers are actually real in there. We're just seeing mainstream kind of taking more notice, especially on the capital market side. So that's a space that we've invested in, and we've spent some time nurturing some really talented entrepreneurs and companies in that. Cybersecurity, you and I have talked a bit about this. We, posted an article in Forbes a couple of weeks ago. I think this is going to be a very, very key sector as well. Not only is it important because, if we look at what's been happening over the last 8 weeks, people are learning remotely online, working online. There's more sensitive data that's coming out there. Seeing a doctor, online, and so cybersecurity and privacy are going to continue to be spaces which we think are going to become more and more important as more and more data is kind of transmitted, and sensitive data is transmitted. And so that's a sector that we really kind of believe in and like. There are other sectors that I think outside of our scope that we're seeing, kind of become more and more valuable, from logistics and supply chain management and other areas. But for us, virtual and augmented reality, AI, gaming, cybersecurity, those are the, IoT, those are the spaces that we're spending most of our efforts and time in.
You mentioned when we started off right now talking about augmented reality, virtual reality, the what Greece is doing with sort of tourist trips to visit some of their sites virtually and be able to take that in. I actually really like that idea because I could see places like art galleries, historical sites, who wouldn't want to virtually go visit the pyramids or something like that at a time like this?
Yeah, no, it's really interesting too, because I remember during the first kind of .com boom in the mid 90s, there were companies like Second Life that were popping up, and what it was allowing people to do was to escape their existing, for an hour or two a night, escape their existing kind of real world and go into this Second Life or Second World online, where they could create their avatar and connect with people. And there was bars and clubs and a variety of different things. And it's kind of like what we were talking about. There's certain things people want to do. They want to connect, but how they do that changes. And it's interesting as we've seen that change. And now I think on a go forward basis, imagine this, like we've seen gaming being used as a social tool for people to make friends and connect with one another while they're playing games. And then that next step, is kind of twofold. One is, if I want to go and see a friend, somewhere, or see my family member, somewhere, let's use India, for example, with my grandparents, or, with my parents being able to put on a VR headset and them actually being physically in a room with us. Or, we've seen, one of our companies worked on this experience where, for an advertiser, where you put on a VR headset and you are in an area where you've got gloves, and the scent in that room is consistent with what you're seeing on the headset. And with the glove, it's feeling the texture of what you're seeing. So if you're touching a wall, the sensors in the glove are making you feel like you're touching a wall. And again, you can kind of walk around a room. So it's very interesting in VR, not just basically putting on the headset and being somewhere, but the smell that, because what you see, is going to impact your brain. And then if you smell what's consistent with what you're seeing, let's say you're in a forest and you've got, a glove that if you touch a tree while you're experiencing this VR experience, you're feeling it as if it's the texture of a tree. So it's very interesting how we're seeing that technology used, both from a connection perspective. And I remember when Second Second Life kind of popped up. It was such a big thing, and now seeing how much more progressed that kind of experience is.
That the whole platform has become.
Yeah. Do you ever remember that movie Total Recall?
Of course.
Yeah, and it's again, it's very, very interesting, right? Like, and thinking like that movie was shot, what, 25 years ago?
25 years ago, and wasn't it supposed to be happening just like around this or set in this time period?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Well, people are eating pills right now. Like when I mean what I mean by pills, like a lot of vitamin supplements and stuff like that, getting a lot of their intake through
Yeah.
things like that.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
That's interesting that you bring that up. So I want to take it back to the company that you were talking about that's using this virtual reality. Is that one of your portfolio companies?
Yeah, we have two companies in our portfolio that kind of fall into that select category. One is a company called Immersive Tech, and the other is called Shape Immersive. Yeah, Shape Immersive actually this past week they just did a webinar with Accenture, the consulting company, and the VR AR Association in Vancouver on how augmented reality will transform retail in the next decade. Because again, if you think about maybe malls being crowded with people, some people might, again, they're already shopping from home, but how can you enhance that experience? Or if you are actually, let's say, physically in a Foot Locker, for example, how can you enhance the experience of looking at a product and seeing other benefits for that product? So just as one example, I don't know if you saw this, but I think this was 2 years ago. Under Armour did an experience with Steph Curry, with a new Steph Curry shoe, where you could go physically into the location, see the shoe. If you downloaded this app, you can hover the app over the shoe, and you're seeing Steph like shoot, and and seeing him, and again, just bringing to life.
I did see that
physical things.
It was really good. The one I seen was a LeBron James one, and actually it was a company that's listed on the CSE called ePlay Digital.
Yeah.
And shared something like that with me, where you walk into a Foot Locker, there's a picture of LeBron James dunking. Like it's one of the famous photos, but when you use the app and watch it, he actually has the motion of dunking the ball, and the crown on his head falls off.
Yeah.
It was really cool. So I could totally see that. And to your point about how it's going to change retail, there's a lot of people right now that are used to online shopping for clothes and shoes and stuff like that. There's people like me who are still touch, feel, smell type of people, whether it comes to clothes, food, or whatever it is. And I still don't buy clothes online, but something like that might help and help me to take that step and be able to still have that experience and be comfortable with making purchases online. So there's still a big demographic of people that still like to go into the stores and stuff. Yeah. So I think that tech will definitely be well received.
It's interesting too, though, because I was mentioning earlier, having been kind of in the tech sector since '95, I remember there being so many things introduced where people are like, we're never going to do that. Like, like they can't even imagine a world like that. And 25 years, they can't imagine a world without that. And it's so interesting too, because not only, 25 years ago, we were those like first adopters, early adopters. And it was our parents that were kind of, the ones that were slow to get on email and Facebook, or, get their mobile phones and texting and all that stuff. But now it's such an integral part of their lives. And it's interesting to see, again, it's the ability to kind of look forward to, I look at my kids, they've never seen an encyclopedia. They've, grown up with a, tablet and Google. And so it's interesting because I think as we're looking forward, there are going to be things that might seem foreign to you and I. And like, again, I'm like you, I still want to go physically into a store, but, I can see the difference. My wife and I, there's like an 8-year age difference, and she orders everything online. And I see my kids, like my kids, it's funny, we were talking about getting food and they wanted DoorDash. We're like, okay, well, DoorDash is a delivery service. Like, what do you actually want to order? They're so used to like, things just, they go somewhere and order it and whatever, they want comes. But I think that it's, when you look forward, the opportunity is going to be able to find those opportunities where, what the new normals are going to be. So the people that are accustomed to like, and will be early adopters for what those new things are. And then eventually, people like yourself and I are going to be kind of the late, the late adopters. Like
the late adopters. I'm okay with that. That was a good little chat about that side of things. You did mention a Forbes article that you had written a few weeks ago that came out. I found it to be very informative. It was talking about cybersecurity, where it's been, the shift that we're seeing, and where you see it headed. You want to maybe give our audience a little bit, give our audience a little bit of a briefer on that article, what it kind of talked about. What we'll also do is when we post this on our CSC TV blog, we'll make sure to include a link to the article so anybody watching this can also take a look and read that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, I mean, again, I was, kind of talking earlier, again, it starts with the fact that people want to eat, play, connect, like there's those same habits that they have, and it's how they're doing it. And today, so, 25 years ago, it was, when you look at cybersecurity or security, it's Norton antivirus, just having these different viruses, because all you had was a desktop and email and, a couple of software programs. Today, you're seeing like the average, household has almost 11 devices. And when we look forward, we see, internet, IoT devices becoming more and more prevalent. You go into someone's home, everyone's got a phone, they've got a smart TV. Some have a Ring Central, which is at Amazon. You can see who's kind of ringing your doorbell. Siri, Alexa, Google Home, like there's all these different, smart fridges. And so they're now, as we look forward, there's now more devices within a home, more devices that are connected, which means there are more entry points for hackers to access the network. And anytime there's a financial incentive, you're going to attract, hackers. And so instead of, just having Norton antivirus on your computer, you now have to think about securing all the entry points into your network. Let's say as an example, your home network, today, because what hackers can do is they can hack the most vulnerable network the vulnerable device on the network to attack your like the more valuable and sensitive data. And again, in the last 8 weeks, we've now seen that we talked about this earlier, people are spending more time online, whether it's streaming, gaming, communicating, shopping, seeing medical professionals, like working from home. So the amount of sensitive data that's there becomes more and more important. The challenge always too as well with the devices. So in a home, it's one thing if all your devices are from a certain company, then there's some consistency on being able to kind of prevent backdoor entries into kind of the network. But in a home, you might see a Samsung TV, an iPhone, an HP computer. And so you're seeing multiple devices from different brands with different kind of protocols. And so it's becoming, as we become more and more connected and we have more and more devices and devices from all over, we're starting to see tremendous vulnerabilities, kind of within people's networks. And then, one other thing too is it just takes one bad apple or one bad device on a network. So, and it's not just on the home space, when in a company office environment, they have all the staff coming in, and staff are bringing their phones from, or their own home personal laptops from all over, and they're generally connecting to the Wi-Fi terminal in their office, and they could be vulnerable to, they could be that vulnerability for the entire network. There's been a couple of examples, and I kind of talked about this in the article, where we've seen that Amazon Ring Central being hacked, and hackers spying on and talking to kids in a home, or casino being hacked because it's smart aquarium. Hackers found their way in through a smart aquarium to then get connected to sensitive data in a casino. So cybersecurity. So I rambled there a bit, but
that's you're actually. It wasn't rambling at all, because I was just so immersed in what you're saying. And what I was going to cut into was that, so it could be as simple as having a smart bulb in your home where you can get hot, like a Philips Hue.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And again, I think, when we look at just the average household, though, there's so many connected devices. And we were talking about technology. If you're looking forward, I think it's people, there are going to be more smart fridges. Everyone's going to have some sort of personal assistant in their home, whether it's Alexa, Google, Microsoft, or one of those devices. And so or the smart TV. So the more and more, and just to think, your smart TV actually has a camera.
Yeah.
So it's
I was looking at it right when you said it.
so there are a lot of a lot of a lot of vulnerabilities. And again, I don't want to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but in the last 8 weeks, we've seen ourselves consuming a lot more Zoom, using a lot more using Zoom a lot more, or apps like TikTok. And TikTok is owned by ByteDance, which is a Chinese company, and so people are inputting their dancing and their voice and their their facial recognition into this technology, where we don't know where necessarily the servers or that data is being stored. That it was the same kind of, again, not being a conspiracy theory, not knocking either of those two technologies, but just for people's mindset for thinking about, again, like, you and I are doing this Zoom call. We're talking our voice, how we talk, what we're saying, our facial
Mannerisms all are being included right there.
Yeah, and again, it's a company that's not, it's a Chinese-based company, right? And so where's that data being stored? How is it being used? There's so many things. A lot of people don't even look at the privacy policies when they download apps and how their data can be used. And so there's a lot of things that I think the challenge with cybersecurity is, not only could one device on a network be a vulnerability because you've got so many different device makers, it's also humans, right? Like, a lot of times we're our own worst enemy, right? Like,
you nailed it. We're so guarded with certain things, but then here comes an app like TikTok, and you're like, "Here's my stuff, take it."
Oh, yeah, it's so addictive, man. Like,
I'm not on there personally, but I'm guessing you're a dad of 2 young kids. You've got a wife. You probably have no choice. You're on there.
Well, I'll tell you the funny story. My wife asked me to download it to check it out because my son, who's 8 years old, wanted to download it. So I downloaded on his behalf to go and see what it was about. And obviously, we have not allowed them to download it, but it's addictive. Like, it's
Yeah.
those things where,
So you guys must have a family account.
no, just that, just that right now.
You actually, speaking of your son there, you bring up a really good point. So I'm going to ask you this. Now, we're talking about cybersecurity issues, being connected a lot during this time. As a parent, how do you talk to your children about, being hacked and giving out information online and being protecting?
I think there are probably, there's probably better content out there specifically around, like, all the best practices.
As a parent,
it's on there, but I mean, I think for us, their points of contact are their iPad, or in my son's case, his computer, and we put on privacy controls on both to be able to not only monitor screen time, but what my kids can view and what they can't view. And so I think as parents, we've done I think a fairly decent job by ensuring that the devices that they are using, or what where they can potentially be in a vulnerable position, we've tried to control that. And then there have been some videos and because my kids can't really read that well yet, but some videos that we've had them kind of watch to just educate them on things that they best practices, things they should look out for, and notify my wife or I if they see anything out of the ordinary. And it's interesting too, because my son plays this game, Roblox and Minecraft. These are 2 games he plays quite a bit, where, again, they're games where you're connecting with multiple people from all over, kind of in these games environments. And so like, you never know who they're connecting with, and so we've always kind of done a good job to communicate. I think that's the big thing too with our kids, like, communicate with them regularly, so that they can talk to us if if they're seeing anything out of the ordinary walk, or just to talk to them about what's going on. My son will be like, "Oh, I made like 42 new friends." I'm like, "What friends you're making? Where are they?" And just keeping kind of that line of communication open. But for our kids, I think the first step was just making sure that wherever they are, we're kind of controlling that. There are some really good best practices, because our kids can't read the greatest. Like, we found videos what they can watch, which again, can give them some tips on it. But I think as parents, it's going to be something consistent that you're going to have to adjust and iterate as new tools and new technologies kind of come out as they get older. Like, I know your son is a bit older too as well, and it's harder to track and and like put.
By now it is, yeah.
Yeah, but at that point too, we see that like being in the technology space and having been in it for 25 years, we've seen a lot of issues transpire, whether kids are like, junior elementary or high school or even in college for that matter. And so there's always, as parents, there's always, things that you can do, I think, to just make sure your kids are, kind of,
Yeah.
Prepared for those areas.
Shafin, I really appreciate what you said. And as a dad, I completely agree with you. My son's 18 now, but communication, there's nothing better than that. There's no too early to talk to them about things. These days, everybody's connected. Your kids are going to find out about stuff. They might as well find out from you, or at least be, or at least know that if they do have questions, they can come to you and ask you those questions. I've tried my best to keep an open line of communication with my son ever since he was a young kid. I actually, I always told him when he was in elementary school that on his 13th birthday, and this is completely off topic, but not really, I'd take him for a walk on Hastings, Main and Hastings. For those of you are not from Vancouver, just look it up. You'll get the feel for it. But I didn't want to take him there to laugh at those people or point at them. It was basically to be like, these people were all children like you at one point in time. It's decisions that you make and choices that you're making, the people that you're surrounding yourself with, that can end up here. And I think on his 13th birthday, we actually did do that. And, he's always been able to call, ask me whatever questions he wants. We're more like friends now that he's 18, because there's always been, I was like, you're going to find out about these things. You might as well hear about it from me. And if you have questions, everybody in the family is around to answer them. Don't be shy. So communication, I want to take it back to that. Kudos to you for bringing it back to that point as a dad. So we talked about a lot of things here in the last little bit. What sort of stuff, or now I want to take it back to the cybersecurity stuff. What kind of things are people being hacked for right now? Is it just the usual stuff like IDs, money, bank accounts and stuff? Or do you see people going for different sort of stuff that they're trying to hack people for, especially now because everybody's at home. People are using their computers to do a lot of different type of things, whether it's shopping, doctor's appointments, like you mentioned. I'm thinking there's a lot more data available from people at a time like this online.
Yeah, I mean, I think in our experience, we've seen two major types of reasons. One is financial. So, it's kind of going back. There's generally a financial motivation or incentive for hackers. So, it's kind of looking at those areas where there's a there's a financial implication. And so, IDs, bank account information, credit card information, or even, for example, like things that could be sensitive data where, their companies can get extorted. So, the hackers generally are motivated financially. And so that's one significant area where there's some sort of financial, motivation. So yeah, credit card, banking info, that kind of stuff, or sensitive, data. The second is there are a lot of hackers out there that just are there to kind of expose, either breaches in certain, like some people, it's like almost a game for them to hack into systems to, identify kind of loopholes. A lot of companies actually, it's interesting, provide rewards and money if you can actually hack their system and find kind of vulnerabilities, so that they can patch it up. But I think that the biggest sector is always around like that financial incentive. Like what would incentivize someone to spend the time, and resources and money to hack, and it's those areas that become kind of the most kind of vulnerable.
Got it. So would it be fair to say that, the industry sort of thrives and is based on fear, and not in a negative way, but
well, yeah, I mean, I would look at it, I would look at it like this. You build a house, you have a door, you lock your door, you have windows, you lock your windows, and you try to eliminate as many entry points into your home for people that are not you, and then you and your family have like the proper keys to kind of get into that home. And I think it's the same thing with your system, right? Just like someone would break into your house to steal something, you try to do as much as like close the curtains, turn the lights off, have an alarm system, all those different types of things. I think it's just the nature of the beast is that if you have sensitive data and there's a financial motivation or incentive, someone's going to potentially, try to hack that in. One side note too, one of the reasons why we, like let's say the blockchain space and the decentralized space was a space we were looking at is that, a lot of again, we want to do the same things. We want to, see pictures, connect with our friends, do a lot of those different things. But most of the software, let's say take Facebook, for example, all the data is stored in one central kind of system and it's owned by Facebook, even though all the input is all the users. So if a hacker, let's say, hacks into Facebook, they're hacking, data or sensitive data, all the users have kind of uploaded into the system or input into the system. In a decentralized system, it becomes different because, you're inputting data into a system to do, A, B, and C, but that data is not stored on a centralized system. It's, broken on a wide network and it's more encrypted and it's harder to kind of, to kind of hack into. So I don't know, I think these systems, I don't know if it's necessarily, let's say, fear. I think it's just like we're going to be doing the same things, just like in the house analogy. It's just doing things that can because hackers will always be there, just doing things to kind of protect, like make sure you have a door, make sure it's locked, your windows are locked. So like, you might have an alarm, like, and you're not letting, kind of vulnerabilities into your system. So I think it's just a nature as we spend more and more of our time and our data and our resources on our phones and on our computers, like we just need to be, just protective in general over that. So even a fear thing is just like, I think almost like a common sense kind of thing.
Common sense. It's not really that common anymore. It's like a superpower.
Exactly.
Guard it if you have it.
Yeah.
So I know you mentioned, let's not get into conspiracies, but where do you see a lot of when it comes to data breaches, cybersecurity threats, where do you see a lot of these threats coming from? Are they, as most people would assume, they're coming from abroad, but are you able to shed some insight on that?
We see them, we see them come from everywhere. I mean, I think the thing is, when we talk about data breaches or again, it's happening in a virtually like a cyber world, right? Like, and so, we always hear about hackers in Russia and in different parts of Asia, and I think there's I think they're coming from all over. I think where they come from is it's harder to peg down because the media over here generally portrays hackers to be kind of like in Eastern Europe or in many of the movies you watch or out of China. And I think again there's definitely a lot of a lot of hacking potential breaches coming from those regions. But I think again it's one of those things where it's got no, in my opinion, it's got no geographic boundaries. It's really all economic based. If there's an incentive, people are going to try to breach that system wherever they're based out of, and generally wherever they are based out of, you're never going to know because their connections pinging over
they're VPNs all over. They're quite sophisticated actually. It's not like your old days where you'd be able to kind of pinpoint things. They're coming from all over. I mean, even here we get for instance, the Service Canada calls from CRA and stuff. The big one, and a lot of
Nigerian scams, man. Like it's crazy.
I mean, they do harvest a lot of that information, whether it's your phone number, certain details that they might need by you sharing them online. So
yeah,
you kind of hit the nail on the head. Shafin, let's switch it up a little bit. So you've been a Canadian entrepreneur, innovator, investor for quite a long time. What sort of trends are you seeing within tech when it comes to the public market space and venture capital? What are your opinions on that?
Yeah, I mean, so there are a couple of things, and I can kind of, I'll start kind of speaking about Victory Square Tech. I think for us, we've looked, so I don't think anyone could have predicted the, COVID-19 kind of pandemic.
Absolutely.
But, for us, history is cyclical and human nature is predictable. Like, we can go back 3 decades and see that, we've had recessions towards the end of our, end of the decade, like in 99 and 08, 09, and, and today. And so, there's this periods, whether you're private or public, of, everything being hot, and then, there being a bit of a correction, and then a transition, and then a new bubble kind of forms. And so in 2018, as a company, we started to kind of take a step back, looking at two things. One, we knew that the technology that we were in, whether it was VR and AR, gaming, AI, those spaces were not only going to be important today, but important over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. However, what's going to change is the economic climate. So meaning that we have good teams, good companies, good products, but if there's any sort of economic challenges, they may not be able to raise capital or money. And so the focus with since 2018 for us was to, ensure that we get those select companies in those right verticals, team product, but making sure that they're capitalized. Because when a correction comes, it doesn't matter how good your team or your product is, everything boils down to cash flow. What is the cash that you kind of have on hand? So making sure that those companies were in a good cash position. Our focus right now on the next 12 to 18 months is to be able to go on the offense, right? So we now know that, globally we're seeing, economic challenges. And so there's really good companies, good products, good teams where we're able to either, consolidate, through an M&A or a merger, or new investments at, better kind of valuations, or better entry points. Like Buffett says, it's not necessarily investing in a good company, it's your entry point to that company. So for us as a company, we felt like, again, looking over the last 3-4 decades, we know the markets are going to come back, but it's during these periods, that 99, 08, where there's tremendous wealth creation opportunities, while everyone is kind of paused, it's your opportunity to kind of be on the offensive. And because we're in sectors that we know are going to be hot, are important for the next 20 years, our companies are focused right now, and we started this shift in 18 to be able to be kind of on the offense right now. Now, as we go forward, you and I touched upon this earlier, we were talking about VR, and you're saying, you still want to physically go in and touch and feel the clothes and things of that nature. When we look forward, again, it goes back to those spaces that we think are going to be important. When we talk about blockchain, for us, it's more about decentralization. We think, again, people are going to still want to do the same things. It's just how they do that. So for us, that's a technology that's going to be key, and we're starting to see it have an impact in, like, supply chain management, logistics, even banking for that matter. For VR, again, it's a focus that we're in because it's going to impact training, travel, gaming, all those different types of sectors. AI, again, we think is going to be really important because it's a key component. Lots of businesses have data, and now it's what do you do with that data to make your business run more efficiently, or to give you better, to be able to utilize your data for to make your product better. So for us, as we look forward, it's the spaces that they've never gone away. It's like, from not being any less important. I think what's happened now is that it's giving us as a company a better chance to accelerate right now, while everyone else is kind of paused, trying to kind of get their own house in order. We're trying to go and be a bit more aggressive in, in the cybersecurity space through M&A, in the VR, AR space, online learning, all those areas that we've kind of already planted our seeds. So.
Not to take away anything from our medical workers and first responders, but kind of would be safe to say 2020 is the year technology saved.
Yeah, I mean, and I think, like, it's funny because obviously our frontline workers have been incredible and amazing. Like, I was talking to a friend of mine who's a doctor, and I felt so bad because he was kind of telling me about his experience, the number of hours he's had to work, but even the challenges at home, because before he sees his kid, the worry is when he leaves the hospital, he has to wash himself up, before he goes home, and it's just interesting, to see, how many, how much sacrifice that they've done for, to keep all of us, kind of safe. So I would say it's their year. Like, this is the year of
I completely agree. All the credit goes to the doctors, nurses, first responders, people working at healthcare facilities. They're definitely the true superheroes. When I did mention that comment earlier, it was pure jokes, but yeah, no, definitely.
Well, I know what you mean, and I think the thing with technology, I think the thing with tech, tech has always been there. I think we're now just appreciating how valuable or how important it is to us.
All those life-saving devices are technically tech.
Yeah, they're all technically tech, and I think also, when you look at like 2020, I think will be broken into two parts. One is, what kept things going when everything was kind of paused, and then two is, once things open back up, how can technology be used to allow us to do that? So from from tracking, you're starting to see Google and Apple creating tracking tools so that people can identify who around them has had COVID to be able to trace it back in case someone tests positive. You can go on a system and see every other kind of device that person or person that person kind of came near. If you look at, let's say, the tools that we think are going to allow us to transition out of this, the Zooms and that will allow us to transition back into the normal, but without not, some of the new innovations that we've been using will allow that transition to be a bit more seamless. I think we've also seen technology is going to play a role in the mental health aspect. So, when you talk about frontline workers or people, there's going to be massive challenges, on people needing to get help. And maybe it's that help through, virtual therapists, for example. Because some people I think there's going to be a little bit of PTSD from people being afraid to leave their home. And just as an example, it's funny, like I'm like, when I cough or I might just have a dry throat, I'm like conscious and I can see people,
giving you the side eye.
Giving me the side eye. And so I think, there's going to be things that people are going to need to deal with. And I think, technology is not only going to have been important today, but I think it's going to be important as we transition out. And I think it's going to be important as, for allow us to have a new normal. Like we're going to see things like VR, for example, be a key component to that.
Absolutely. Shafin, you actually filled us in with quite a lot of stuff there. It actually led into my next question, but you'd already kind of gone into it, which was, where do you see businesses on the other side of COVID? And I think you touched on those points. Shafin, I mentioned earlier, you've been in the tech space for quite a long time. You're well known not only in Canada as an innovator, entrepreneur in the tech space, specifically here in British Columbia on the West Coast. You want to talk to us a little bit about some of your initiatives that you're involved with when it comes within the tech community here in Canada and BC, and to help cultivate the next generation?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll tell you one thing, because I've been asked this question before. I think here, operating in Canada, I think we are at a huge advantage. So, living in one of the greatest countries in the world, we have stable government, access to healthcare, good quality of life. Tech is borderless, so we have access to the U.S. markets and the international markets from here, and great government support and tax credit. So I think the first thing here is the Canadian ecosystem is really, really healthy. We've got great supporters that that lobby the government, and there's great support from the government itself. Great academic institutions. Here in British Columbia, we collaborate with the digital supercluster initiative. We've got the BCTIA. We've got leaders like Ray Walia and Alex Chuang and Hussein Halak at Launch Academy. There are some great organizations here that that have been kind of not only keeping the BC ecosystem live and vibrant, but the Canadian ecosystem, as a whole. So we've been fortunate, I think, to be operating here, because I think not only has it been an advantage for us over the last 20 years that I've been in the tech space, but I think it's going to be an even greater advantage today on a go forward basis. And we've got, again, great companies, great organizations that lobby the government to keep these great programs we have available. And then the government itself here, I think, has some amazing initiatives. So from a Victory Square perspective, we've been part of kind of that entire ecosystem to not only be able to add value to it, but also in representing us and our interests. Because one note is we bring some of the top entrepreneurs and companies from all over the world to Canada. So again, tech great is coming from everywhere. So whether it's Brazil, India, Middle East, like, some of these top companies, we're able to attract them to Canada because the Canadian brand is so strong. People are wanting to build companies.
It's such a good hub when it comes to tech. And, like I want to actually give a shout out to Accelerate Okanagan. It's much bigger than just Vancouver being a hub for tech. Like we at the Canadian Securities Exchange are patrons and sponsors of Accelerate Okanagan.
Yeah.
And I love going out there because they've built such a niche little community within the tech space out there over the last number of years that it's nice to go out there and talk to like-minded young people that are helping, not only build teams and moving dreams forward, but building tech that's going to affect and influence the rest of the world.
Yeah, I mean, again, they're a great example of an organization that's doing, doing big things. And again, the Canadian brand is so strong from a global perspective. We've got amazing, an amazing ecosystem and infrastructure here that's not only made us strong today, but I think it's going to be a huge advantage, like, as we move forward.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I see us as definitely citizens within Canada that are helping to move the tech space forward when it comes to that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your background, Shafin. We talked about it on our personal side. We've talked a little bit about on our live. Like you've been in Vancouver for a long time. Were you born here?
Yeah, I mean, so my family's from East Africa. I was born here. I left when I was 17 and came back when I was 34, and I've been here since. So I'm 43 now. So it's been this last stint has been a 9-year stint.
Got it. Let's talk a little bit about when you came back at 17. How did you start off as an entrepreneur? Talk to us about some of your first ventures.
Yeah, I mean, so again, very very fortunate coming from an entrepreneurial family, and again, being I think so much of when I look back, so many things have to do with like timing. So grew up here in an immigrant family, who ended up becoming entrepreneurs. I went to university at the University of Western Ontario in London, Ontario, and had a bit too much fun in my first semester. And I was there on a scholarship. This was 95, and didn't want to come home, so I had to start a business. And this was early internet years, and the idea of being able to see how the internet was going to disrupt different businesses. The business that we saw was dating. Again, being a university student, one of the things that's always on your mind is dating. And so
Yeah.
we introduced kind of a dating a platform and site, and it took off. And what was interesting is that pretty much set the tone over the next 25 years of everything we've done, because that business was based on a couple of principles. One is we saw something that was going to happen. We saw how the internet, that technology, that innovation was going to disrupt how people connected. The second is it's something that was easy to translate globally, because anywhere you go, people wanting to connect was common, and just using, again, software and internet website to do that was easy to kind of translate. The third is, again, it became a very easy business to run, anywhere, because you weren't physically seeing someone, or recruiting a client. You put this software up, and two people are connecting with one another, and you can run it from anywhere in the world. And we saw that in that business, on 1 million users we would drive into a site, maybe 5 to 7% would convert into paying, and then the balance, that's how we decided to create new businesses. We would look at what the rest of our customer base were doing when they left our site, and we would buy, build, or invest in new businesses to kind of target that audience. And so that's how our venture studio model came about. We would go and buy, build, or invest in businesses that we already had a customer for, and those businesses fit that idea of being digital, easy to translate, into multiple jurisdictions, and that's how we were able to launch over 40 startups in 21 different countries. And all of those businesses were generally cash flow positive early, kind of early on. So interesting is that, Anil, can you give me 1 sec?
Of course.
Sorry, 1 sec. Sorry, buddy.
All good, man.
Sorry.
We do it on the fly. This is COVID 2019, and this is part of life now.
Sorry about that, brother. Yeah, no. So, but it was just interesting because there's so many things about that business at the age of 17, from A, seeing how the internet was going to impact, B, creating a piece of software that you could, again, had no boundaries. You could connect with customers all over the world, very easy to translate. And then the idea of having, users in a system that in your idea of buying, building, or investing in anything, ensuring that you're mitigating your risk from the very beginning, because you're building something based on already having a customer base. And so we were very fortunate to, again, have caught really, really, big cycles, because especially, we went from dating to online gaming. Again, easy to launch globally. And in those businesses, we started to see pain points we had in our own business, like payments, for example. So we went and, started a payments company from scratch. And so that's kind of how the infancy of VST is always, Victory Square Technologies has always kind of been there. And then in seeing in each of those businesses how, AI became important for each individual business, how payment did, how cybersecurity was a key component. You've heard about dating sites being hacked in the past. And then again, you look at AR and VR, like how can you enhance that experience, whether someone's playing a game and not just playing a game with someone, maybe they can actually be in the game. So again, very interesting, like, when I look back from 17, age 17 today, it's been 25 years of being in the technology space, starting in specific sectors that are catering to what people want to do and just adapting to how they do it as new innovation comes, from internet to mobile to high speed to now, the next phase, which we think is going to be 5G. So
yeah, Shafin, you're a perfect example for a younger adult, or even a young late teen, to be able to see what can be done. So that was when you'd built this online dating forum when you were what, 19?
No, man, this is like 17 or 18.
17 or 18. Okay, wow. So that's a perfect example that you can take that and still be able to move forward with it. What is a piece of advice you'd give to a 17-year-old Shafin if you were to be able to go back in time now?
A lot of bad relationships I could have avoided. No, I think I'm one of those people that I don't like to.
I would have had hair still if that was the case.
I don't like looking back, because I feel like I'm so grateful and fortunate for where we are today. And I feel like a lot of those mistakes were key in that, in kind of in kind of the personal development. But I mean, if I had to, I would say there are a couple of things that I think were really important. One is I would have surrounded myself by mentors. I think that I would have avoided a lot of mistakes had I had mentors that had experience in specific areas like accounting or law or tax, which I think would have been very helpful for me. The other is, I think, the understanding of, like, it's interesting when you go back, every phase I go through, I learn and I'm able to take tools to kind of my next phase. When I look back to, if I'm talking to a 17-year-old, and especially in today's climate, right, that, that person, there might be a lot of uncertainty and a lot of concern and worry about what's going to happen. And, I've always found that having a plan, so it's almost like a roadmap, identifying what your destination is, and then building your plan by working backwards, and creating small kind of, small steps that are achievable to kind of get to that. And not feeling afraid that, if your initial goal is that you want to get to, to, let's say, Florida, if it changes, that you have a roadmap that allows you to iterate, not to feel concerned or afraid about that. I feel like a lot of people go into the, let's say at that age of 17, that, where I was, that they're, going down a path where they don't know what they want to do. There's a lot of uncertainty. They're worried, they're concerned. And the plan that you set doesn't have to necessarily be the plan that you follow, but it at least gives you some sort of structure, some sort of guideline. I feel like that was something that I wish, mentors in a more concrete plan, I think would have been really good for me to kind of, have stayed focused, but also been able to talk to people to say, hey, like, is this normal? Should this be happening? Yeah. And, anyone that's been, that's experienced would be able to give you that advice. Yeah, things are not always like a hockey stick curve.
It's not linear, yeah.
You're going to go through ups and downs, and, and it's being able to be passionate about what you want to do, to be able to get through those challenging periods where if people at the age of 17 haven't really gone through too many, real significant challenges to note that. So
Absolutely. That actually goes back to, I always say, and it's not my quote by any means. This is a famous one. It's failure to plan is planning to fail.
Yeah.
But you also have to learn to adapt with the ebbs and flows of life. You might have to change that plan from time to time.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because I'm a huge sports junkie. So look at you know uh, like Mamba mentality, like Kobe, or even like I don't know if you've watched The Last Dance on.
I haven't had a chance
Oh,
to watch it yet. I've heard a lot of good things. I'm excited to watch it.
amazing! Like even Jordan, for example. But the idea there is, again that there's they have a focus. Like you look at Jordan, not making being cut from his his high school team and just not being the best player when he first landed in North Carolina. But again, being focused and determined. So it doesn't matter what challenges get pushed at them. They're so passionate about what they want to do that they're willing to put in the work. They're willing to get through those difficult times. It's like,
Tunnel vision.
yeah, tunnel, and I think a lot of, and that's what I think is really the difference maker. Everyone wants to be rich. Everyone wants, wants to have, this and this, but it's your ability to make it through the most challenging periods. Because, they also say too, I think like one of the defining characters about people that are successful is the one thing is they never gave up, right? Like they refused to give up, and eventually they got to where they needed to go, right? So
This actually takes me to some of the stuff that I follow you online. I see that a lot of your posts from time to time have to do with a hashtag that you've coined, lessons from hip hop.
yeah.
And growing up when we did, hip hop's been a huge part of all our lives as teens, young adults. Now it's a little bit of a different landscape, but take me into your thoughts there behind lessons from hip hop. Let's kick into that.
Oh man, like hip hop is such like it's such a key part of me as music with a lot of people. I think there's so many periods in my life that like who I was listening to and what I was listening to kind of inspired everything I was kind of doing. And you look at some of those artists, over our that I've been listening to over the years, and how they built brands and empires and diversified, being something I've always looked to kind of from a business perspective. But the music, right? Like the music is what inspires, whether I'm working or working out. There's so many artists and so many lines that, I find I listen to when I want to get, hyped up. You and I talked about this. I mean, there's so many, and it changes over time. I know the last time we spoke, I was talking about Tupac, like, again, keep your head up. You always have to, feel, be positive and keep your head up, like the challenging times come and you have to rise to that occasion. And on that, I know Dre has this one quote where he's like, even when I was close to defeat, I rose to my feet. And, there's so many times where as people, you can go through life knowing that like you hit so many challenging points, but that's when you rise. That's when adversity builds character, right? That's when you got to dig deep down, and it differentiates people that are going to be successful and overcome to people that are going to fold when pressure
Tough.
but
Tough times don't last. Tough people do, right? That's
yeah.
usually okay. I hope some of this resonates with not just our younger audience members, but even our regular audience members that are listening. Hopefully, you guys find this content valuable. If you do, it is all available on CSE TV. We'll be posting it on the CSE blogs as well. It'll be available on YouTube. And, I would highly suggest that you follow Shafin and his team from Victory Square on social media. I'll let Shafin let us know where we can find more details about Victory Square and what you guys are doing in the next coming months, years.
Yeah, no, again, thank you for the time and everything. The CSE has always been super awesome, to us as a company. Anyone, has any more questions, feel free to reach out to us. We're on LinkedIn, either personally under, Shafin Diamond Tejani or Victory Square Technologies. You can also find us on Instagram, my name, Shafin Diamond, or Victory Square Technologies. So LinkedIn and Instagram are, two of the best avenues to kind of to follow us. Keep an eye on us. VST is the ticker symbol here in Canada. Got big things coming. Technology company focused on building the next tech giants.
Shafin, it's always a pleasure, not just even running into you on the streets, even though I'm really looking forward to when we can either break some bread or have a beer in person. But it's always a pleasure getting some insight from you and talking to you. We at the Exchange truly appreciate not just you and your team, but the entrepreneurs that you guys show within the tech space. So we're always around if you guys need anything. Do you want to leave our audience with any last words?
Yeah, the biggest thing I think, again, timely to what's happening is things are going to be better, and focusing on what we do have and how we can, again, changing the focus on the fear to how we can take advantage of the opportunities that are there today and getting prepared to take advantage of them when things kind of open up, because they will. So again, here for everybody, hoping everyone stays safe and positive, and yeah, I'm looking forward to things getting back to a little bit of new normal.
Normalcy. Say hi to Peter, Darius, and some of the other team members. I know Peter and Darius, so those are the names I'm going to mention on here. But other than that, we wish everybody stays healthy, safe, happy during these times. We look forward to when we can actually be back in our studios and our offices to be able to provide you guys with more content. But in the meantime, CSC TV is where you'll find more of our stuff, or follow us on any of our social media channels. Shafin, always a pleasure. Best of luck.
Thanks so much. One thing I forgot to mention, because
go ahead.
Fans Unite. Fans Unite will be listing on the CSC on May 5th, which is next week.
Awesome.
So exciting. Keep an eye on, check out that ticker. Great team, great company, spawned out of VST. So
let's chat offline about this. Maybe we can follow up with Darius coming on a podcast, talking to us a little bit about fandom and what they're up to. I look forward to that conversation. Again, thank you so much for your time. I look forward to having you on here again as well, and enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Awesome. Stay safe, brother.
Same to you, Shafin. Cheers.
Bye.